Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm Commission President Christina Lambert. I am filling in for the mayor. He should be here momentarily, but there was an officer who was injured on the scene making an arrest. I've been told that it looks like he will be fine, but our mayor is there at that site right now. So we will carry on, but definitely our officers and their families are in our prayers and thoughts. So I will start with any comments from our commissioners, and I'll start with Commissioner Riles.
No comments.
No comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Schoaf?
Thank you. Mr. Ward, if you might give us two updates, update on the anchor site as well as update on the tent site, if you could.
Yes, ma'am. Madam President, Commissioners, with regard to the anchor site, we are waiting for the approval of the terms of a lease to come back from the bank, Emmacor's bank, and I should have that on the agenda on the next meeting, I think on the 12th. For this, so terms of that I'm anticipating being on the 12th. The tent site, I will say that I was saddened to hear of the passing of Cesar Pelli, who is a very worldwide, well-known architect, who was the architect, the head of the firm that Mr. Cohen has selected for his development team on the tent site. However, Mr. Pelli, having been, I think he was in his 90s, he certainly hadn't been completely at the helm of the firm for a number of years. So Clark Pelli, or Pelli-Clark Pelli, is moving forward with their concept designs. I expect them to come forward with something soon, although I haven't seen anything from them. So we had sent the requirements of the site, height requirements and that sort of thing, to Mr. Cohen a month or so ago, and my understanding is that they're in the process of developing their site plans and a concept drawing to bring to this board.
Thank you.
Don't have a time frame on it though for you.
Thank you. Commissioner Nearing?
Thank you, Madam President. Just wanted to acknowledge CRA and Wendy and a lot of other folks as well for the fourth Friday on 4th Street. The rain clouds held back and a good time was had by all. So I think, as I think about these different initiatives, it's really when they all come together is where we see the changes in our community. But again, you're talking about an area that typically is unused, and it was a great opportunity for networking. I think there was a nonprofit showcase, and there were vendors, local vendors, who also got to reap the benefits. So good job.
Thank you. Commissioner Peduzzi?
Thank you, Madam President. I don't have anything.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have no comments at this time as well, and we'll move on to our agenda. And I neglected to say that today is July 29th, 2019. Our meeting convened at 3:30. Carrying on to item number 2, resolution number 19-36. Accepting the guaranteed maximum price for the Sunset Lounge project and approving the third amendment to the construction manager at-risk contract with Cooper Construction Management. Mr. Ward?
Madam President, Commissioners, today before you we've got the consideration of the guaranteed maximum price for the construction portion of the restoration of the Sunset Lounge. And I've got a brief presentation we can sprint through. It's essentially the same thing that we saw at the workshop, but just as a review for the benefit of the public, if you'd like. As we indicated the other day, there's been some conversation in the past about why we got focused on the Sunset in particular. What was our inspiration to move forward on that building in particular? And I can tell you that we look back, when we first started here, we look back at a document that was prepared in 2002, and the official name of it is the Northwest Neighborhood Strategic development plan, but a lot of folks in the community refer to it as the Stull and Lee report. And as I've discussed with some of the commissioners, several of the folks up here had participated in the community meetings when that was developed. I know Commissioner Riles had indicated he was there for some of their meetings, and I recognized some of the names from the community when I reviewed the report as well. But the Stull and Lee report was the first significant planning exercise for the historic Northwest. And it gave us a lot of good frameworks to reference when we first started doing work here. We've heard a number of people refer to the most significant buildings in the historic Northwest, and invariably Tabernacle Baptist Church comes up, Payne Chapel, and then the Sunset is typically right there with them. And in the Stull and Lee report, section 5.2 suggested land uses indicates right there that the Sunset would become the nucleus for a mixed-use cluster around a small park at 8th Street and Rosemary Avenue. So it's always been held, even in 2002 when they did that report, and beyond in 2010 when AECOM was hired to do some planning work as well. The Sunset's always been a significant part of the community, and we take our cues from that. So, as it indicated in the Stull and Lee report, it said it referred to a mixed-use cluster of assets, and that's how we've been approaching the neighborhood as well in the interim period. And you can see here on the diagram the upper square is the Sunset. We have acquired, of course, as part of this project, that entire block, and it'll be used for the Sunset and for parking and other improvements. And then just below it, that block, envisioned initially by Stull and Lee as half of that block for a much smaller park exercise. We've thought outside the box there and got a much larger footprint that we think is appropriate to develop a community park in. So that entire square will be that community park. And then the horizontal square below that even is the location for Heritage Alley, in which we're going to build a series of small buildings that will be the locations of where local entrepreneurs will set up for economic development that we're going to put in there. And then the southmost square, it's actually off the map, is the potential location that we've suggested for the National Center for Arts and Technology, the Manchester Bidwell project. That'll be the hiring job development center that we have been discussing with this board for several years now. So this is how, of course, the Sunset, for everybody's reference, this is how the Sunset got started. An early picture in the Sunset was, of course, a roof garden above a garage. And then here comes 1942, and this is, I think, an ad that appeared in the Crisis magazine, in which the building had pretty much been built out into its present form. You can see that big double-sized, double-height space on the second floor where the ballroom was, and of course the bar downstairs. So this is pretty much as it appeared today. And then when we started looking at doing development work there, one of the things that was the most important thing to us was community engagement on this, outreach to the community to talk about what was going to be happening there and what the community would like to see. In 2016, this agency won the Knight Foundation's Cities Challenge Grant to engage in a very extensive community engagement, civic engagement exercise. And we have gone through dozens, literally, of events, and this is one of them at the Sunset. Before it was closed, we had a number of events, a number of concerts in the building itself, in which we literally had overflow crowds. And at every one of these things, we showed posters and ideas, pictures of the kinds of things we'd like to see there, and we were getting opinions from folks. This is an event that we had outside. They had a fish fry, and while we're doing these things to attract folks there, we're interviewing everybody and getting their ideas and input on what they wanted to see. And you can see here, next one please, ma'am. You can see them designing the park in many ways and giving us opinions on what they'd like to see and the kinds of events they'd like to see here. And in the park, it's things like, what do you want to see there? Basketball courts or open space for play or events for concerts and that kind of thing. So we went through this exercise well over 100 times in meetings, large and small. And then we started to do pop-up events. This is a park pop-up across the street in which we literally started building some furniture and painting it and kind of setting up what the park might look like and might work like with the community. And you can see us assembling things with some community volunteers. It's the big tree, of course, that we all love. Go ahead. And again, the constant exercise was getting feedback from the community. Set up booths here. This is the second time we did the park mock-up, and that pink item there was envisioning an entry, potential entry to the park. It could have been a trellis or a series of things, but what would it be like if you came through something like that? And you can see we had a lot of things set up around the tree, which has, of course, always been the centerpiece of the park, or the envisioned park. Next. This is a great thing. As I said before, this is how we discovered that that there's apparently an ordinance. You can't have a tree swing in our parks. It's I guess we've got a rule against it, but we did it anyway, and there were never fewer than 3 kids all day long on that swing. As a matter of fact, as an example of how popular the swing was, at the end of the day, the kids ended up breaking it. The whole thing fell out of the tree. I think there were 5 kids on it when it broke, but it was just a great exercise for them. And you can see this is a concert there, but even in this, in the center on the left-hand side there's Gina getting surveys. We're going around interviewing folks and talking about what we want to do there and what they want to see and that sort of thing. And at the end of the day, this is the point of the exercise. Building families, building communities, and finding out what would be great in that community for us to move forward holding their hands. And from that, the entire time we were in the development process with our architects, and from all of these conversations, this is the Sunset Lounge 2.0. And on the left, you can see the original building, and then on the right, you can see a 7,000 square foot addition to the building itself. And the addition was, when we first started looking at the Sunset, the first conversation was renovating just the building itself, redoing the existing bathrooms, and maybe putting in a small a catering kitchen or something like that for food service in the back, but a real kind of what could we get away with sort of an attitude to try and see what that might look like. And then the architects came up with originally a plan on the north side of the building. On the back of it, they envisioned a tower where we could build some new bathrooms and a staircase and some things like that on the back of the building. And that it wasn't the kind of building that we thought that this neighborhood deserved. And we thought to ourselves, what would be the best thing to do for the neighborhood? What would be the best way to move this project forward and create a public space in the community that would do everything that would serve them, to bring back an entertainment center, but be a great place for community meetings and fraternity things, and have great bathrooms and elevators to get you upstairs that were never in the building before, and a full kitchen, and put in a restaurant, and all of those kinds of things. And this is what came from that. And here you see on the left-hand side is the original building. The bar is still going to be in the front as it always was. The restaurant is, of course, the northern beyond the bar there. But it gives you an idea of the kind of space that we're using. There's a kitchen there, There's a pre-function lobby space that you can come in. You don't have to come through the bar. Historically, every time you visit the Sunset, you had to go through the bar. So we were looking at a way that folks that might not want to necessarily have a cocktail there that day, but they would want to eat food with us or come to an entertainment, and that gives them the opportunity to come in through the lobby and come through the restaurant itself. And then they're renovated new restrooms, 2 elevators are in this building, and as I said, a kitchen. And the kitchen we're still kind of scratching our heads about because we haven't set on an operator yet. We don't know exactly what kind of food's going to be prepared, so we're waiting on finishing up the kitchen part of it, but it's accommodated in this floor. And then on the
Mr.
second
Ward,
floor, yes, ma'am.
if I may, I just have
Yes.
a quick question before you move on.
Right.
You mentioned that we wanted the best use of the building, and then you also mentioned some changes to not entering through a bar. I'm just curious, because you also mentioned we had 100 or so community outreach activities. Was it from those community outreach activities that we were able to determine that this was the best use of that facility?
Madam President, I think the short answer is yes, I think so. We heard a lot of conversation about the way that the building had been used literally since the 30s. And of course, through the years, they've always had some sort of food service in the building. Everybody's been to one of Larry's crab boils out on the parking lot and that kind of stuff. And we also had people that would bring in food and set up a food line inside, or there were people that would come in trucks and you'd eat out of that sort of thing. But the need for a food service is something that seemed obvious to us. You can't really run a bar without some sort of a food service. I know after I have 2 or 3 cocktails, I want a snack, and that's just I think fairly typical. But we thought instead of just doing that, maybe we ought to have a great place to eat here too that would also serve the folks that came to concerts upstairs. There'll be several hundred people at a time and be able to accommodate them as well. Plus, a full kitchen will give us the ability to cater special meetings. So, for instance, if a fraternity wants to have a reunion or something there, it gives us the ability to have food service there. So it really makes this not a compromise, but a full-service community center in every sense of the word. So, yes, we do think that's what's needed.
Thank you.
And then on the second floor, it's going to go back to the ballroom as it was in the old days. One of the first things that the contractor had to do during selective demolition was go in and tear out the 2 floors of apartments that were built upstairs back sometime in the 70s, I guess, 60s. So it'll be that great open space again, and out from there a public space, a pre-function space, in the same manner that when we all go to events at the convention center, you have coffee and things out in those wide, great hallways prior to the event starting. And that's kind of what we envision here too, is having the ability to have that kind of space set up for a kind of a holding area. And then again, more great bathrooms and that sort of thing. And the other thing that we're going to be able to have in the upstairs ballroom are things that were never there in the original building. And the best example is green rooms for the entertainment. In the old days, we've seen all these great pictures of everybody you ever heard of performing on that elevated stage. But in between sets, they just had to, I think, sit down at a table in the mezzanine or something like that and just kind of mingle with everybody. They didn't have a space to get off stage or come on and make an entrance, or showers or places to get ready for that all of these kinds of facilities should have. So in the new building, we've been able to accommodate green room spaces and all that sort of thing too. And of course, it'll be a first-class facility with a modern sound and audio-visual capabilities as well. It'll have a curtain so you can open and close and get your shows on and off, sort of a thing. So it'll be upgraded in that fashion. So this is what it looks like today, actually. After tearing out the 2 floors of apartments upstairs on the second floor, this is the old ballroom. And you can see here great sign from years ago, no dancing allowed in the balcony. We're looking forward to the day where we have lots of dancing going on in the balcony. It's coming soon. And this is what it's going to look like. Just like the old days, it'll be back in that same great hardwood floors, just like all ballrooms used to have. You can see that curtain across the stage, that elevated stage, as it was before. We've just finished restoring the roof, and I think the next slide shows you the view from the mezzanine. And here we can have tables and chairs set up around the mezz. The good thing about this is it'll be built as a flex space, so you've got the ability to have just chairs, seating for concerts and things to get the maximum amount of people in there, or you can have tables and chairs for sit-down dinners and events and that sort of thing. So it'll be a great flexible space. Finally, as we know, the reason we're here today, of course, is to look at the hard cost of construction. And there were two ways, as we've discussed, of arriving at a price point for these kinds of renovations. The construction manager at risk is the method that the city's procurement department has been using for these things. It's the same method that we've used for the last two fire stations that we've recently built versus the bid-build method. And the bid-build method is, of course, if you design a building, you typically design a building, you put it on the street, you take bids for it, and then you select the actual price, the bid that the contractor would submit. Both of these methods have issues with them. Sometimes some are better than others. Typically, the bid-build method, what happens there is you look at the numbers, you oftentimes select a contractor, of course, based both on his experience, but also on the number that they submit. Oftentimes, I've seen a lot of folks that always pick the lowest bidder as opposed to the most responsive bidder. And of course, as we all know, about 10 minutes after you select the lowest bidder, they start beating you about the head and shoulders with change orders that never end. So there is no end to your exposure in this method. You try and control it the best you can through the normal operations piece, but there is no limit to the number of change orders that you can get from a job. The construction manager at risk method is one in which they put it out, the construction manager puts out the project for bids based on our specifications to his subcontractors, a field of subcontractors. They come in an open book fashion, they open the subcontractor bids, add it all up, and they give us, at the end of the process, what's called a guaranteed maximum price, a GMP. And the guaranteed maximum price is the maximum price of the building. That's your cost of the building. There are no change orders at all in this process. Of course, as I pointed out, generally speaking, the downside of this typically is that you don't have that comfort of looking at 10 prices or 3 prices or 2 prices and comparing prices from everybody and picking the low bid. You have only your construction manager at risk one guaranteed maximum price. And I would suggest that, as we would all do, they're always going to give you a number that they can live with. If emergencies come up, something changes, they have to give you a price that they can build a project for, because if something goes bad, they have to eat it. So therein lies that. So having said that, construction manager at risk is how we have selected to go with this project. Cooper Construction has given us the GMP that you see before you, $10,445,017. That is, in fact, our second GMP. As I indicated, we got the first GMP in January. It was $10,800,000 and something. We did not accept that price point. We went back, asked them to reissue the bids with their subcontractors. They did that. We've done some value engineering and worked through it and have taken about $400 and something thousand off of this price already. So this is the price for the construction of the building and the new wing itself. And as I indicated, there are a few items that are not in this price for a variety of reasons. As I said a while ago, we haven't designed the kitchen yet because we don't know exactly what we're going to be cooking there, so that can't be determined at this point. But we've got a number that I've plugged in to cover those costs. The FF&E, which is furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. Obviously, we wouldn't buy that from a contractor. That'll be bought from a third-party supplier. So we'll have to acquire all that. That's your tables and chairs and all that sort of thing. The AV equipment, again, will come from a specialty provider who will also install it. The finish carpentry, there's some soft costs that are not in here. As the price moves around from the contractor, the cost for the architecture and some of our consultants has increased as well. And I've also included a contingency in this overall number. So my overall number for the project is $12,250,000, and that's including all of these other items. And I will tell you that I have a $280,000 contingency in that number, and the contractor has a $200,000 contingency in his construction number. So we may be able to save some of those dollars as well. And there is also about there's a $400,000 or $500,000 number of items that we are still value engineering right now. So if we take all of the value engineered suggestions that the contractor has provided us, this number would be closer to $10 million if we do all that. And I don't want to tell you that today because we have not been able to make those decisions. And there are things like, I illustrated to you, things like the air conditioning system, for instance. The architect has suggested a chiller system for a variety of reasons. We could buy what's called a split system, a series of split systems, and kind of zone out the entire building. That would save us, just by doing that, would save $100,000. My concern at this point, which we're still analyzing, is the cost of operations for the one versus the other, and looking at lifespans and things like that. So we've still got some work to do on that, but it's entirely possible that we'll be able to take a few $100,000 off of this guaranteed maximum price just from a value engineering standpoint. And that's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Questions? Commissioner Nearing?
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. And my questions are going to be similar to what they were during the commission work session. And first, I guess is just kind of an overall statement. You alluded to the Stullen Lee report, which was, I believe, commissioned in 2001 or 2002. And at that time, the city paid approximately $170,000 to commission that report, which is a significant amount of money in today's term, versus 20 years ago. And, I'm sensitive to the fact, a couple of things. First of all, the city did not own the Sunset in 2001. And 2008, I don't care what project you wanted to complete, it just wasn't going to happen given the economy. So I realize that this is a very fluid process. But what I will say, one of the big takeaways for me as 1/5 of this commission is if the city currently or in the future commissions a report or study, I would hope that in doing so that it would not take 18 years to bring that to fruition. You know, that's like, best way, an analogy I can think about is it's being sick and going to the doctor, and the doctor prescribes medication and you decide not to take it. So why did you go to the doctor? So I wanted to just say that as an opening. There are a couple questions that I have, and I don't know if you, Mr. Ward, or Mr. Hayden, if he's here. This RFQ, when it went out, at the crux of it, along with some other items, was how do we ensure that local participation is a part of this process, both in what it should look like, and I appreciate the activities that we went through in involving the community, but the reality is the community wants to be involved in the dollars that are made in projects like this. So the question I have really centers around both the temporary jobs from a construction standpoint, which perhaps Mr. Hayden can help with that, and Mr. Ward, the permanent jobs. We know in a project like this, and the final staff estimate is 12.2 million. If you factor in the 2.7 million, I think we paid for the Sunset. 2.4 million. So you're up to roughly $15 million project. So it's a huge investment, and one that I would think would bring on permanent jobs as well. So I did not ask that question in the commission work session, but both the temporary and involving the community in that, but then the permanent jobs, how are we thinking about that? Thank you.
Madam President, Commissioners, my name is Frank Hayden. I'm the Director of Procurement here. I thought Commissioner, to better help, Cooper has put together some information that will show you their effort in terms of doing that. But our job is to monitor their responses, to monitor the usage of the individuals. When we get an invoice from them, we will go through it. If we find some discrepancy, we will communicate to them and expect them to respond to that. We will be looking at their certified payrolls for the local involvement on the project. And so we will be monitoring the participation to ensure the fact that they're meeting the goals that we have set and that they have agreed to. So with that, if you'd like, I'll ask Ms. Cooper to provide you with some information.
Thank you, Mr. Hayden. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Commissioner, we recognize the importance to the community for this project. The CRA, at the inception of our involvement, has done a tremendous amount of outreach prior to us coming on board, and they've obviously encouraged us to continue forth with that process. So we've summarized for you this afternoon what we've done thus far and our intentions on moving forward, if you give us a moment to go through that quickly. So this is just a quick snapshot of those meetings and events that we've attended to ensure that we've spread the word and communicated with the community throughout the entire pre-construction process for upcoming opportunities and current opportunities as they existed. So just a quick summary, we've attended the holiday party. Our staff didn't just attend, they actually manned the barbecues at the event. We have attended community events such as Bourbon and Bow Ties. We held a community meeting one that engaged the community to inform them about the project. We had a secondary meeting to do the same thing. One was on a Thursday, the secondary one was on a Saturday. We held pre-bid meetings. We've attended CRA open houses. We've attended events at NCCI. We've attended events at the PAL program. We've worked on the Habitat for Humanity home. We've participated in other community events, and we're going to just flip through those quickly here. So for community engagement, three of the items that we promised throughout our solicitation and our award for the contract was that we would involve the community, we would provide subcontracting opportunities, and we would provide employment opportunities. and my logos look like they've shifted with Mac to Windows, but this is the first meeting that we've held we reached out to the community, and what you can't see is former Commissioner Robinson provided a history on his involvement at the Sunset Lounge and watching it come to fruition. This just a quick sample of some of the meetings that we attended and some of the efforts that we've done throughout the community. We've volunteered our time and services for the Heart and Soul Fest, as well as for the those are in the bottom middle, those are the makings of those stackable chairs that went over by Rosemary and Third Street. Everything seems to have shifted. I apologize. So this is, let me go back and see if I can, nope, okay. It's all shifted.
It looks more fun
so
when
we
they're
have
upside
the
down.
Habitat for Humanity home that we worked on 5th Street, where we volunteered our time and helped to rise that project out of the ground. And one of the things that we're very proud about is our project manager. We've actually volunteered for the ACE mentorship program at the PAL program. We meet bi-weekly, exposing neighborhood children who attend PAL to architecture, construction, and engineering, immersing them in the opportunities that may exist for them if they choose to go that route as a career path. And we invited them to attend our annual awards and scholarship night, which you did not get to see on the former page. So it gets to see that there is an opportunity for them, if they were so inclined, to choose one of the ACE careers as a career path, what's available to them. So for subcontracting opportunities, at each of those meetings, which is why we've identified it, we provided upcoming opportunities. So this is an example of a flyer that would have been provided at some of the previous meetings that we would have attended. For notices of bid opportunities, we publicly advertised for 3 consecutive weeks in the Palm Beach Post. We sent out bid invitations through our bid software, which is SmartBid. We did one-on-one phone calls to each of the vendors that are in our database. We sent out emails. We sent notices to the Black Chamber, and they were kind enough to post them to their website. At community meetings, trade contractor meetings, word of mouth, community flyers were posted at locations such as the Salvation Army at UB Kinsey Community Center, so that any community member that happened to walk into one of those establishments would have seen the notification. And finally, we also put out yard signs throughout the communities for any upcoming meetings that they may be interested in attending. This is a quick shot of our pre-bid meeting. We see both the architect, the owner's rep, and the CRA were engaged with us as a partner in this process, walking hand in hand, ensuring that we're doing everything in their best interests as the CM at risk methodology ensures that we work towards. This is a quick snapshot of our smart bid software. We have 253 specifically City of West Palm Beach vendors who we uploaded. We worked closely with the West Palm Beach Procurement Office. They provided us with updates to all of their certified small businesses. They were all uploaded into our database to make sure that we were reaching out to currently certified SBEs who had an interest in the project. And then, of course, we sent these invitations electronically. And again, my photo has shifted. But again, they sit with us hand in hand at the bid opening, as Mr. Ward indicated, to ensure that there's transparencies, that the numbers that we're receiving have the level of integrity that you would expect. And then the value engineering, they really sat down with us to ensure that we went line item by line item and evaluated each of the bids and where there were opportunities for cost savings. The architect did that with us at the 60% and the 100% CDs, and then again with the bid openings, as well as the owner's representative for the city. So employment opportunities. Thus far, and here we go with a shift again, thus far we have worked with both local firms who have worked with us in pre-construction for security, who have employed local residents. We have worked with a firm called LaborMax. They've attended many of those community events with us. We actually met LaborMax at one of the initial community meetings, and they expressed an interest in working with us. And so that's how we engage them. They have reached out to community agencies. They have attended the meetings with us and provided applications to any community residents who attended those meetings and expressed an interest in participating on the project. Our thought process moving forward would be that of those applications, those would be the first applicants, if you will, that get introduced to the subcontractors who are looking to employ local residents on the project. This is a gentleman here who's working on the project who is local. And that completes our presentation. If you have any questions, we also have Labor Max, who is here with us, who has their own commitment towards working with local residents and ensuring that those opportunities are available on this project. Thank you.
Madam President,
Sure.
and Commissioners, just before you proceed, one of the other things I think is important is because Cooper Construction is a certified SBE and also a certified MBE, all the dollars that we pay to them is counted as 100%. So every dollar that we spend with them will be totaled toward 100% participation on that end. Now, we'll take a look at how they divide up the other dollars, but I think it's important that you know on this project, because of their certification, that it'll be counted as 100% dollars going toward a certified SBE or MBE WB.
Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Cooper. I think that it's great to see that you are not only reaching out within the community and the small business owners, but also, as you mentioned, the students and mentorship opportunities. I really appreciate that. Other questions? Commissioner Schoaf?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your presentation. You know, I think in this process, Cooper Construction has clearly been a good partner, and I know has moved one of your office locally, and so to that extent, thank you for engaging in that way. I think this is a pivotal project for the city to invest in itself and help in the Northwest community. And being respectful of those decisions. I think in 2017, it says here in our backup, was the first that this was brought forward to the CRA board, and that's 2 commissions ago. So I'm very respectful of the time that my fellow commissions and commissions past have put into this. I think that there is some room perhaps in this to look at the process by which we got here. Looking at the guaranteed maximum price philosophy, one of the things I had expressed at work session was that it, from this commission standpoint, makes it difficult to have a comparison where in other methodologies, and even perhaps in this methodology a while ago, there would have been an opportunity to just have that comparison. But I want to say thank you to the CRA staff for getting together the subcontractor numbers and providing that complete packet. That was very helpful to go through and see the process by which Cooper went and did sealed bids and did the comparison. So that brought me a level of comfort from the last time we met on this. That being said, we still do have a $10 million guaranteed maximum price in front of us, as well as an estimated $2 million. Bringing our total to 12. And I know there's still a number of projects to fund after this as part of this procedure. So, Mr. Ward, my question would be, I know you reviewed some of the funding sources for the phases here on the Sunset itself, but I think we have about a $20 million total project in front of us between the Sunset, the park, and various other developments on Heritage Alley. Do we have identified funding sources to complete these projects, or are we still looking to see where we're getting that funding?
Madam President, Commissioners, Commissioner, we had, as I indicated before, for this project, this $12 million project, I've got $6.2 million in this year's budget for our TIF budget. And we have the additional funds to finish the Sunset project, another $6 million and change in next year's budget. And that is assuming that you will approve the budget that we are going to bring to you in September. However, our anticipated TIF, which we've already seen the numbers from everybody, the TIF will cover these costs. And between the TIF funding and some of these road projects in particular, the 7th Street work and some of the other things, are coming from the bond funding, which we just acquired as well. So I will tell you that we have 100% of the funding for the projects through either our TIF funding or the bond that we are going to approve later on in this meeting. So yes, we have the money to do it.
Thank you. And if I may? One of the other discussions we had was to the guaranteed maximum price structure. In that bid, there was some discussion about any potential savings. So guaranteed maximum price equals a price for the contract plus a fee to the contractor. And there was an indication that there would be a 60-40 split of any potential savings. Is that written into this approval today, or is that separate?
It's in the amendment today. The original contract provided for the money to go to the city. This is an amendment to that clause to provide the incentive that Mr. Ward described to the contractor should they cause a savings to occur.
Thank you. I guess my question and things that I would be looking to my fellow commissioners on here today too is we had an at-length discussion about that methodology, and again, I respect the decisions of the commissions before me and that they vetted a very good contractor, and I think we have a very good partner in front of us. I would be interested to hear what my fellow commissioners think about proceeding perhaps with the straight contract as it stands, where the city would receive, as per a guaranteed maximum price, 100% of any potential savings, if there would be any, in saying that we have vetted and picked a very good contractor who I think will perform well for us, but I would be in favor of staying with the guaranteed maximum price straight contract. Open for discussion.
Thank you, Commissioner. And I have a question about that. Mr. Ward, when we talked about that, either at agenda review or at the workshop, I can't remember now, you mentioned that there is staff on CRA staff that do look at areas for potential savings, that it doesn't all fall on the contractor. Is that correct? And can you describe that process with your staff?
Madam President, Commissioners, we have on our staff Arturo Cantero, who has 27 years of experience in the commercial building business. Arturo's out here, and he's the one that prepared the comparison of all the subcontractor bids and that sort of thing. And I would suggest to you that Arturo's role in this is as a something of a traffic cop. He will be looking at all of the requests for payment that come in and all of the billing from the subcontractors, and he will be examining that from the standpoint of making sure that the price we pay is an accurate price and it is the price that we would be billed for. However, Arturo's job is not to go and work with the subcontractors and see if there's a way that they can do things less expensively, or to try and encourage them to value engineer some things or do things in a method that would save us some money. So Arturo will make sure that if there's a savings there, it gets picked up, but he will not be creating any savings, if you understand what I'm saying. So the reason for suggesting a possible incentive for that kind of thing is that the folks that can impact their subcontractors is the general contractor. It is they're working under his arrangement. He supervises them. He's got the job superintendent. He's the guy that's running the job. We show up every once in a while and everybody acts like we're important, but they're the guys that are running the job, and they're the ones that will be able to show an impact or have an impact on the subcontractors in finding a way to do it cheaper. So that's the difference in the two. We will certainly know if there's a savings there. We will verify that everything is accurate, but I don't think we have a legal ability to influence the subcontractors in a fashion that the GC could.
And I have a follow-up to that. We opened this by saying that the latest 2 fire stations that we built were also built CMAR. Did we offer this incentive on those projects?
No, we did not. And did we pay the full contract price? So we paid the 100%. So I'm suggesting that, and believe me, I support and appreciate the commissioner's point of view 100%. But I can give you 2 examples of projects we just finished construction on. We had a guaranteed maximum price, and we paid the guaranteed maximum price. So my suggestion here is that I don't know what we have to lose by trying to incentivize this, but that's just my opinion.
Welcome back, Mayor.
Thank you.
And I'll pass it back over to you to lead.
Why don't you, were there any other questions?
Yep.
No, finish this part of it because
Sure.
I'm getting it.
Okay, perfect. Commissioner Riles.
I have a few comments. As a native of West Palm Beach, I think I have a historical sense of how the community feels about the Sunset. The Sunset, to many of us, was the very first nightclub we ever attended or went to. My grandparents went to the Sunset, my parents went to the Sunset, I went to the Sunset. And so it's looked upon like a family heirloom that should be cherished. And I think all of us that are natives here believe we have some ownership interest in the Sunset, that we want to see it succeed. And what I don't want to see is that we get this nice, beautiful building and the folks who cherish this family heirloom for God knows how long are left in the cold. I likewise don't want to see us spend, I guess when it's all said and done, we'll be up around $15, $16 million. And that community that where the Sunset sits doesn't benefit. That the people around the Sunset who sorely need the shot in the arm that the Sunset could bring, that they aren't anywhere in participation. And so I would hope that we are mindful of the obligation to the community and to our duty as public servants to make sure that we are doing everything to ensure that all of our community benefits from this project, because it is a sizable project. Now, I am not as confident as everyone else is about the outreach so far. And in all due respect, the reason we had a disparity study is because over a 10 or 15 year period of time, African Americans and women and Hispanics did not get any contracts here at the city. And so there is a legal mechanism that we now have in place. And so I don't have the very same confidence that we are ready and walking and running to open up the doors so that everybody has a fair shot. Now, from what I saw a lot of community meetings and you know, a couple of outreach, but you know, as a person that lives here, the folks who I know do that kind of work, construction type of work, they're nowhere around. And if local participation isn't likewise a part of our goal, I think we're missing a great opportunity. And so I'm going to stand back and I'm going to ask Mr. Hayden to make sure that he keeps a watchful eye on the project so that not only do we have a percentage of participation that is a minority, whether it be women, Hispanics, African Americans, but that we have some local participation as well. You know, it would be terrible to build a building that's been in our community for all of these years and then no persons who actually supported the building and brought it through its stages actually benefits from the $15 million or so that we're going to spend. And so I agree with Mr. Ward that you know, we can leave the incentive as it is. I want to make sure that the contractor has every opportunity to be successful, that we don't tie their hands up, that we make sure that this gets done and done in a timely fashion. And so every incentive that we can give without being a poor steward of the community's money, I'm all for it. But I will be watching very closely to make sure that local people participate and that the project benefits everybody in the community. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Ward, my question relates to the timeline that Commissioner Riles mentioned. We haven't talked a whole lot about the timeline for this project, and specifically, I was wondering if there is any incentive or penalty for not making that timeline. I don't.
We have that. I think we're confirming what it says in the contract. Contractors indicated a 12 to 15 month construction period, but I'm not sure how it's specifically defined. While they're looking for that, let me say one thing to Commissioner Riles, if I could, Madam. When we won the 2016 Knight Foundation award for this project, they ask you in those things, as they always do in these grant things, what is your biggest challenge to this project? And typically when you do historic preservation work, and I've done a few of these things, when you do this, invariably there are two things that almost always happen. One of the things is that your project is usually sitting right in the middle of where somebody's building a major highway, and you have to move it. It's always in the wrong place. 100 years later, they want to put a highway through there. And the other thing that always happens is that typically in a building that's the age of the sunset, if the termites stop holding hands, the building falls down. And that's certainly not the case here. The place is a fortress built out of concrete. It's not going anywhere. It's great. And my response to that question to the Knight Foundation was that I don't have either of those conditions. The challenge and the reason this will fail, the reason this project will not work, is if we go over there and spend $10 or $12 million of the public's money, and if the project is not embraced by the community, if it is not as loved or more loved by the community the day we're finished as it was the day we started, that's how it will be a failure. And sir, I would suggest to you that we carry that mission statement with us every day. And not only this project, but every project we do. As I say, we don't do projects for the community, we do them with the community. And that's certainly uppermost in our minds. So I hope that that when we've all spent more time together, that we will all know that to be the case.
Thank you. Commissioner Peduzzi?
Thank you, Madam President. I just have a couple remarks. Going back to what Commissioner Riles was talking about, I believe he made some good points, and I'm in agreement with the substance of what he was saying. Turning back to Commissioner Schoaf, talking about the built-in incentive, I think we need to discuss that a little more. While I'm in agreement with the concept of a builder doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, I also understand as a business person and someone who's had employees that sometimes it's appreciated when there's some incentive out there, and it tends to keep people focused on a goal. So I'm not so sure that 60-40 is the ideal cut, but at the same time, I'm not so sure that we should quickly act to scrap the idea entirely, because I don't want to be penny smart and pound foolish. You know, I think we need to look at it, and yes, it may not be something that's used in every contract, but there was a reason why they thought it might be a good idea in this one, and maybe it's something we need to take a little, further look at. That's really all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Nearing?
Thank you, Madam President. I know we have cards, and so I just wanted to Commissioner Schoaf's question of the commission. So I too agree that we should leave the incentive in. I really see us as two options. One is remove the incentive and almost guarantee that the GMP will come in at 10.5. Leave the incentive in, and obviously we don't know where it will go. Now there might be running parallel to that some thought around, well, what's the right percentage mix? I'm fine, because you asked the question, Commissioner, I would be fine with how it currently states, which is 60-40, correct, Mr. Ward, the 60-40 incentive. But overall, I'm supportive of leaving that incentive in.
Commissioner Schoaf.
If I may just follow up as well, I think at the end of the day, the reality is we may be talking about 60% and 40% of nothing. And that's really what the point is. If this commission feels that that is the right incentive, then, you know, I've made myself very clear. I think that I think this is a project that should move forward. I think it's very important for the community. And if at the end of the day, we're looking at potentially arguing of 60 or 40% over nothing, that would not be something that would stand in my way to move this forward. I just want to point out that this may be the precedent that you set going forward on contracts. So while it may not be, it may be $0 on this, it may represent something else on another project. So I think we just need to be cautious of what we're approving here, and what this commission decides today will set that precedent.
Good point. Thank you. Madam Attorney, did you find something on the contract?
And I'll have Nancy Urchek from the office answer your question.
Nancy Urchek, Deputy City Attorney. Commissioners, the contract currently provides for to reach substantial completion in 365 days, and there's liquidated damages of $500 a day for every day that they fail to meet the substantial completion.
And I'm sorry, I missed what you said at the beginning about 365 days. Is that 365 days from the date agreed upon, or?
From the notice to proceed. So once these amendments executed, and we know we have their bonds and insurance and all things that are required prior to construction, a notice to proceed is issued, then they have 365 days to reach substantial completion. And then it's a $500 a day fine if they don't reach that date.
Thank you. If there's no more comments from the commission, we'll open it up for comments by the public. We have cards from Robert Miller and Bruce Lewis. If you both would come up, you can take turns here at the podium. Following them is Annie Harrison Nelson and Joy Cardwell.
All set?
Yes, please. If you'd move the microphone towards you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Robert D. Miller, Jr. I'm a homeowner in West Palm Beach for 36 years. I've lived in West Palm Beach for 78 years. I'm here on behalf of my mother and father who didn't get to see any changes in this neighborhood. But right now, we got a chance to make history, because if we stick with the sunset, we could draw back on the things that we used to see long time ago. They used to have the biggest chauffeurs ball you ever want to see. Chauffeurs came from Jacksonville, St. Augustine area, as far down south as Miami. Sunset was the Mecca. We used to have all kind of parties here. The women used to come out just to see the chauffeurs drive Mr. Bubble Up vehicles. And they had a ball. But when I heard about certain things was happening with the sunset, and I owe my allegiance to the people that I serve out in the community, because I'm out with the Ambassadors Club, and we were the one that went out to try to find out what this community need in terms of the sunset. Every time I go out now, they want to know whether the sunset is going to thrive or is going to die just like the rest of the projects that we was promised. So I say to the council, if you don't do nothing else this year, make sure you stick with the plan that's going on now. I'm a watchdog for the Cooper. I make sure that stuff is done right. I take flyers out for them, because I want to make sure that we get something out of this neighborhood before I die. Because it doesn't make sense for us to go out in the community, ask the people about what they need, what they want, and then all of a sudden I hear the word overrun. We've been overrun for the last 40 years. So please don't stop on this project talking about no overrun. So let it be written. So let it be done. I'm out of here.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Wow, that's a tough act to follow, but His expressions, Bruce Lewis, downtown business owner, former consultant to the CRA on this very project. And I'm going to express a couple historical things for your edification that predates Mr. Ward. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think this was at the latter part of Congresswoman Lois Frankel's tenure as mayor and into the first couple of years of the former mayor, Jerry Muyo. I was asked to be a part of the advisory committee as a result of the Stallman and Lee report. But from a perspective to help develop some initial incentive programs for small business attraction. And at that time, I was serving as the chair of the Downtown Development Authority and a part of the selection committee for those downtown incentive programs for downtown. So I came to the table with a little bit of experience and lent myself to that process. Subsequently, was asked, at that time, the CRA director was Ms. Kim Breemeister, and subsequently, we got started under this, and I believe that Ms. Baker was on board at the time. I can't really recall. It's been a while. But the point I want to make is that the Stull and Lee report really was a good report, and the way it was presented by Mr. Ward, there was a few significant things that were left out because they occurred after the advisory committee was formed. And to Robert's points, there was a lot of neglect, distrust, disenfranchisement of that community for more than 30 to 40 years, as mentioned by Commissioner Nearing in your agenda review. And so what came out of that was that people were angry, and it was like the sky was falling syndrome. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that was the truth. And it really set the tone and the pace of the intensity of the kind of outreach to the CRA's credit, and most could attest to this. We heard firsthand about the frustrations, and that set the tone for the kind of outreach and extensive outreach that was done. But there's two different kinds of outreach in my mind. That first part was really mental redevelopment of sorts, getting people's mindset to say, hey, you know, this is really going to happen. And as you heard the prior speaker say, you know, he doesn't want to see it fail. And so the other thing was that, you know, we need to be mindful of not just the construction outreach, but the community also said, and to Mr. Browse's comments, that we need to have permanent jobs for those at the Sunset
Mr. Lewis.
that reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. I'm Ann Harrison Nelson, City of West Palm Beach, and a native of the Northwest neighborhood. I grew up in the Northwest in the 1940s and in the 1950s. And as a teenager, I lived on 8th Street between west of the Sunset, and the block west of the Sunset, until I graduated from high school. The Sunset was one of the largest, most popular entertainment venues in the South, if not the only largest venue in the South, where men and women came from throughout the whole state of Florida. They came as far west as Moorhaven, Florida, as far south as Key West, far north as Jacksonville, and some people came from throughout the state of Florida just to visit the Sunset because it had the most nationally known big bands in the country and performing artists in the country that were appearing there. And it brought a lot of enthusiasm in our communities when those acts were in the community. Even as a child, I mean, we were all running around knowing that the big bands were coming and the entertainers were going to be in our community, and people were sending us to the cleaners to pick up their clothes, and some people were shining shoes, and many things were happening in our community as a child when I was growing up, and I couldn't wait until I became of age where I would be able to go to this famous venue, this famous establishment. This establishment made Black West Palm Beach a city that was written about in newspapers and magazines throughout the country. West Palm Beach was on the map for its progressiveness, for its prosperity, and its self-sufficiency. I believe that this project is the only project that you can fund that will bring much-needed pride in our community. It will bring enthusiasm, it will bring vitality, and it is the magnetism that will spur jobs and economic opportunities. I wish to see a new Northwest neighborhood that I can enjoy before I die. As I've seen in other neighborhoods where there are new improvements and new activities that's been spurred, that has brought about vitality there, and also to see future generations learn about the history of the Northwest District. So I encourage you, don't sway on this project. This project is going to make you proud. So think about it and give it your best shot and your best funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Joy Cardwell.
Mayor, Madam Commissioner, and the rest of the commissioners, my name is Joy Cardwell. I come with two hats. I'm an international recording artist who came out of New York, who came through the Apollo Theater. The Apollo Theater is well renowned as a place of cultural, historical, and financial significance to the Harlem community. And in the time that I started there at Amateur Night in 1985, when I was a freshman at NYU, Harlem was really kind of messed up. It was looking pretty much exactly like many of the Black communities in the country. The significance of the Sunset Lounge and how it can impact not only the community in the short-term basis is not just in terms of construction jobs or jobs after the building is built, but also the return on investment can come from the cultural significance that can be portrayed worldwide with what's happening in West Palm Beach and what can go forward. One of the projects that was presented within the survey and what was asked for were actual cultural programs for seniors. Currently at the Apollo Theater, there was a recording studio, there's a radio station, there's a TV show that comes out of there. So, Palm Beach as a center for film and music and entertainment can utilize this building beyond its obvious scope of just being a place that you can provide entertainment. Also, I'm invested as a person who has spent the last 2 years in the Northwest community, giving my time teaching yoga, meditation, and wellness within the community, and at Tabernacle Baptist Church, doing community events for health that will also tie into the community, not only going into the park, but across the street in Heritage Alley, where I plan on opening a wellness center and providing these services as well as jobs to the community. So I want you to think about this project not just in context of a building, construction, short-term jobs. Think of it as a cultural institution, the revitalization of a neighborhood, and also in bringing forth the commercial aspect, which is sorely missing in the neighborhood as it exists as a hub for the African American community and all the communities that are here in the downtown West Palm Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more card, John Reese.
Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of the Northwest District for myself. James Brown, Sam and Dave, Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Burley Brown, Carl Vickers, Benjamin Littles. These are people that you probably don't even know about. I do. I played in the Sunset many times. I lived on my parents, I live on Rosemary right now. And my father worked for Cracker Johnson. You have a great, great, great opportunity here to do something good for the community and for the people here. I would hope that you would be able to let whatever needs to pass, whatever needs to go forward, to do that. So many times we misuse people. So many times we do. Which? Those two people over there, believe me, I've been out, those two people out there, They are for real. They really are. I'm a kind of person, I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. They are. I think you have some good people that's representing what they're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commission? I wanted to make one comment to Commissioner Nearing's point that it is sad that this sat on the shelf for 18 years, but I want to say thank you to the residents who championed it and didn't let it die on the shelf. And so I'm proud to be voting on this today and hope that that doesn't happen for 18 years again in the future. So with that, I'll entertain a motion, if there is one.
I move to approve resolution number 19-36.
Second.
Motion and a second. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And I will now hand it off to Mayor James.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate you carrying on in my absence. I don't know if it was announced, but I was delayed because I was attending to a serious situation. One of our officers was injured in the line of duty, and I needed to check on him and his family. I'm happy to report that he is doing much better, and we're expecting a speedy recovery. But thank you again for filling in. Item number 3, resolution number 19-37, approving an agreement between James Corner Field Operations and the West Palm Beach CRA to develop a framework plan for the design of the Curry Corridor. Mr. Ward, are we going to be able to get through this item in the next 13 minutes, or do we need to move items 3 and 4 to after the City Commission meeting? How much progress can we make here?
Mayor, Commissioners, I think we can certainly, I think we might be able to cover both of them.
Okay, let's try it then. Okay, item number 3, who's a presentation?
I've got 2-slide presentations that tells you what the money covers on this, if that's required. If you wouldn't like to see one, then we can pass on it. But I've got. Let's just do it quickly. The item before you is this is the scope of services for this, and this is what's going to be accomplished through entering into this preliminary contract. They're going to look at parking in the park, the quantity of parking, the amount of it, the potential for off-site locations that as we've discussed, vehicle access to the park, whether or not we have to redesign some of the entrances and things like that, drop-off valleys, all sorts of issues. Physical connectivity talks about how the promenade that's anticipated from Northwood Village intersects the park itself, as well as how you get across the street and whether or not we're going to need more lights and that sort of thing. And then park edges, the view corridors, and what it's going to look like for people driving up Flagler, and whether or not they're going to continue to see the water and that sort of thing. So that's the scope that this contract will anticipate looking at. And one more slide. That's the schedule for it. It's a 5-week exercise. It'll entail 2 trips here to town. They'll develop a framework, and we will go from there. This is for a cost of $80,000, and it's anticipated they've got a not to exceed, I think, $10,500 for potential expenses and travel and that sort of thing. So it's a $90,500 contract, and I'm asking that you approve it.
Commissioner Neary?
Thank you. So I'm supportive of this, but I wanted to just on the record, running parallel to this contract is a baseline understanding by James Cornerfield and his company that there are some limits to the budget in terms of maybe what we had looked at a year ago versus now. So just as long as there is at least that framework, again, not asking us to be on a specific amount, but that there's a range and that they understand that there is a range for this ultimate development.
Mayor, Commissioners, we've had discussions with them, and we have given them a not to exceed dollar amount for their design work, and it's the project cannot exceed $20 to $25 million for the cost of improvements to the park. And that's been, they are clear on that. They've acknowledged that. And the Part B to this contract will codify that.
Commissioner Lambert.
Thank you, Mayor. I am very much in favor of the Curry Park project. I want to make sure that we have an amazing park here and come up with the vision that we have all been talking about for some time. My question is, it relates to going back to James Cornerfield operations and negotiating the contract to include this. Would that, I was going to ask, would that set us back much to be able to do that, or how quickly do you think we would be able to do that to include this instead of having to negotiate that separately?
Mayor, Commissioners, if we don't move forward with this and get them engaged, I would say that it'll take me about 30 days before I can finish the negotiation for the scope of the larger contract and bring it back to you. So it cost us another month.
Commissioner Schoaf.
Thank you. And similar to what we discussed in agenda review and to Commissioner Lambert's question, I think going back to this, we had two designers here. We were choosing designer A, designer B. Commissions past chose designer A and wanted to negotiate out a design agreement. I'm in favor of moving forward to get engaged. My concern here is we do not have a not to exceed amount on design. And if we're still negotiating out design, what stops us from coming back here and having a design fee that's not feasible for this $25 million park?
Mayor, Commissioner, that's negotiation. If they provide us with a number that we can't live with, then we won't move forward.
Yes.
What it comes down to is I will bring it to you and you will not approve it.
Understood, but that puts us in a predicament now where we're potentially approving $90,000. If it comes back in a place where it's not approvable, then we have taken $90,000 towards something we're going to have to start all over on. And while I'm in favor of moving forward to get things moving, one of the key things here that I don't see on this, and I'm hoping it's just built in somewhere that I'm not seeing, is community engagement, which I think is number one in what the community has been asking for. So I think I would ask for a little bit more information, one, on where the community is going to be engaged in this particular agenda. Two, do we have any kind of not to exceed on development fees in that the scope would be brought down to met that fee? And then three, when we do have that scope developed, where are we getting the funding for the $25 million park? So, I think it's one thing to have a great framework in place. It's another thing to be able to implement that. So do we have any ideas on those three things: community engagement, funding for the fee or not to exceed for the fee, and then funding for the park?
I think the Mayor, Commissioner, I think the whole thing hangs on whether or not we have the funding for the park, and I do not have an answer for that, and I will not have an answer for that in the next 30 days. My assumption is that the bulk of that money is going to have to come from the parks, either through a bond or some other method, or the city will have to budget for that. This agency will not be able to fund a $20 million park, and I've been very upfront on that. We'll be responsible for the design fees and to get us to the point where we launch it, but we cannot pick up that cost.
Well, the city, I'm not sure, is going to be able to fund a $25 million park. How did you come up with $25 million or $20 million? I mean, where did that number come?
Mayor, that's less than half of the number that they gave me the first time they gave me a bid for the project. They told me that they wanted $4.6 million for a design fee, and that they estimated that using a figure of something in the neighborhood of $5 million an acre to build out a park at a 13-acre park that we've got, they indicated to me that they thought it would probably, to give us a quote, world-class park, the cost would be $40 to $60 million. We told them from the gun, absolutely not. That is a complete non-starter and is never going to happen. I told them that we could talk about $1 million, $1.2 million for a design fee, and $20 to $25 million on the build out of the park would be, in my estimation, the highest number that I would anticipate that this board would be comfortable with funding. That's where it came from. It's me giving them a number that I thought would be the absolute maximum we could live with.
Okay, at some point, we need to hear an idea of what's feasible in terms of financing. I'm not saying that we need to hold this up until that, but we need to have that discussion sooner rather than later because, as I mentioned at agenda review, I don't want to create unrealistic expectations on behalf of the public that we're going to roll out a $25 million park and then have those expectations not met. Let me go to, there's any other? Yeah, no, I just want to see if anybody else.
Just wanted to follow up on my.
Another follow-up, okay.
Well, I had asked about community engagement, and there was no community engagement listed in here. Is community engagement part of this scope of work?
Community Mayor, Commissioner, community engagement would be not the focus of this, but it is certainly the focus of their design effort. This is just trying to get a framework put together and some broad brush things. The public can participate in watching the workshops. There are two that are indicated here, but it would not be the kind of robust community outreach that you would anticipate in this phase of the contract. No, ma'am.
Yes, Madam President.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your answer, Mr. Ward, and I would just make the point to my fellow commissioners that I think that 30 days is a reasonable amount of time to wait to see a bigger picture before we spend this, nearly $100,000. So I would not be in favor of moving forward today.
Mr. Ward, wasn't there also concern that they may walk from this if we didn't do something sooner rather than later? I thought I may have heard that in your conversation on Thursday. No?
Mayor, Commissioner, Mayor, this is a complicated, as all of these things are, this is a complicated situation in which we have the desire of the community to do something in a park. We have a contractor that we have hired that wants to get started. We have a developer that is planning uplands developments that this is intertwined with. Everything we do here will be connected to the uplands work in a very intense fashion. I don't know that they would. I don't know that they would walk, and I don't know that we would be poorly impacted by 30 more days or not, sir. My crystal ball is currently busted, but these folks are. What I do know is that the developer is ready to have his architect interact with our park designer, and I cannot have them talking together until we get them under contract. And that is the primary goal of this, is to start them interacting with each other, and then we will go from there. But there's that.
All right. Commissioner Schoaf.
Thank you. And this being in my district is one of the main topics that comes up, and I really do want to move Curry Park forward. But one of the things I thought was coming out of this was community engagement. And I don't think it behooves us to contract a park designer on behalf of making sure we're working well with the developer before the community has a weigh-in. I'm in full support of making sure those two plans come together, but to me, this is a community-first type of platform, and is this something that we can wait 30 days? Is this something that needs to be voted on today, or can we look at it in 30 days?
Well, I didn't hear him saying that this is going to be the full plan. I think the contract is coming out. Go back to the scope of work so we get a better idea as to what we are contemplating doing. So we're looking at design criteria for parking, physical connectivity, and park edges, not the park itself, not the grand design of the park. And these seem to be the areas that intersect with what the developer might be doing, correct? And limited to just that?
Mayor, that is largely true, except for the fact that several of these items, especially parking and the physical connectivity, have a great deal of impact on what happens in the park. As I've said before, many times I refer to Curry Park as Curry Parking Lot, because it's literally 30 to 40% of that park is under asphalt. It's where everybody parks their trucks and trailers, and they do not actively engage there. It is not a soccer field, and it's not a park. It is literally a parking lot. So what we do with that asphalt, how we treat it, if it continues to be merely a truck parking lot, or if we're able to engage with the developer that owns all of the uplands to move, for instance, the parking to an off-site place, and how we accommodate that is something that I would suggest to you has significant impact on what the park's going to look like. And the same thing's true of the promenade. Right now, we have always suggested that a promenade from Northwood Village to the park is something that is a desirable element of the park and would, I think, benefit both Northwood Village and all of those developments, plus the park itself. So the question is, Mr. Green's initial architects have drawn a promenade that literally went all the way to the water, and I would say that that cuts the park in half, and that has a significant, again, impact on what the park design ultimately will be. So I'm suggesting to you that all of these things, whereas they have much to do with the development that's going on to the west of the park, they are intimately interconnected and important that both be considered. So that's the reason that this is important. But no, it is not the final design of a park, but it has everything to do with ultimately what it looks like and how it functions.
All right. Commissioner Nearing, but it's 5:01. Sorry. It's 5:01, and we do have a time certain for the beginning of the City Commission meeting.
Okay. Yes.
So we're going to have to hold any further discussion. I would say let's move this until after the commission meeting. I think we'll be able to get through the agenda fairly efficiently, but I'm open to any suggestions. Is that fine? Okay, so we'll adjourn this meeting for now. Thank you all very much, and we will reconvene as the City Commission at 5:04.